we're going to go ahead with this evening's speaker. We're going to do this in a question and an answer format. And I will ask questions and then Tony will answer. Tony Degn was born in 1965 in Amarillo, Texas. He served in the Army National Guard from 1984 to 1986. Tony served as a transit police officer and as a reserve police officer in Utah and Oklahoma, and as a deputy constable in Utah. He worked in security for approximately 20 years, which included loss prevention, armed and unarmed security, executive protection as a bodyguard for singers and actors, the governor of Utah, mayors, and other city officials of Salt Lake City, Utah. He also worked in security for the Kansas City Chiefs games as a supervisor and at the Players Hotel the night before games. Tony's been a professional singer since she was a teenager, working for the Andy Williams Show in Branson, Missouri, and as an Elvis tribute artist. Currently, he's working towards being on the 2022 America's Got Talent. Tony's an actor and worked on Touched by an Angel and the Goldberg shows in Hollywood. Tony Degn is a paranormal experiencer and witness to UFOs, spirits, shadow people, extraterrestrials, and other strange phenomena. He's had several encounters with a Batman Mothman type winged humanoid creature in the greater Kansas City area in Missouri and Kansas. Many of these sightings were investigated by MUFON and some are still under investigation. Tony's had a strange spiritual and past life connection to the Elvis Presley family and to Karen Carpenter, which only he can explain. And that is what we are going to hopefully get to this evening. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, you have had a very busy and active life in many respects, but let's start with when was your first paranormal encounter?
Paranormal, I'd say I was probably 10 years of age in Oklahoma. And it was a night that my mom was out partying, but she didn't leave me a number. And I was worried about her. And I got a hold of a Ouija board and I tried to find out where she was at and spit out a number to me. And so I called the number and she answered. True story. And after that, things were happening like my brother was going to go on a boating trip in the Arkansas River. And I had a, I guess you could say, premonition, vision, whatever, of him being killed if he were to pursue this. And I begged him and pleaded with him, don't do this, Chris, don't do this. Something's going to happen to you. So he backed out and another boy joined him. And unfortunately for that boy, he was stabbed and drowned in the Arkansas River the very next day. And since then, I know like when famous people are going to pass away, I see disasters before they take place, things of that nature.
And when was your first UFO sighting?
Well, I don't know if I want to go about UFO sighting, but how about a lost time? Because I think it's, it plays into it.
Oh, yes.
I was on my way to be baptized in the LDS Church, Mormon Church in Independence, Missouri. And my friend who was baptized me drove me there. And on our way, it was rainy, thundering, lightning. And I remember his vehicle had shut down, the radio shut off, and all kinds of mechanical things were going wrong with the car, and it just wouldn't start. And we heard this kind of an interference. And we were supposed to be at the church, I believe, 3:00. This happened around 2. And to us, it seemed like maybe 45 minutes had passed and we were still going to be on time. And then when we arrived to the Independence Chapel, the bishop and stake president of that ward that I was to be baptized in basically was upset with us when we came in. He said, "Where have you guys been?" We explained what happened. And, is it, still 3:00 or whatever? And he was like, "It's 6:00 at night. You guys be gone for a long time," So we're like, "Oh my gosh." So that's the first recollection of a lost time that had taken place. And as far as a UFO, I would have to say it was about a year later in Independence, Missouri. I was laying on my bed staring out the window and I noticed the moon. and it was a full moon, in which I thought it was a moon. But then the curtains were halfway opened, and as the moon was moving, and it got to the center of the opening of the curtain, and I was thrown to my bed and felt a presence at my feet, and that was my first, what I believe, a UFO sighting.
About how old were you at that time?
I would have been 18, I believe, 18. So
When you say thrown to your bed, did you actually feel like hands on you or a force? What was it?
a force forced me to my bed. I was laying on my side, and it completely turned me over, pinned me to the bed.
And do you have any other recollection of what happened?
Excuse me. I did pray out loud because it scared the living daylight out of me. And as I looked to the end of the bed for see who was there, they were gone, and that was the end of it. So,
Do you know about what time of night that was?
it had been around probably 8 p.m. I think, if I recall. I mean, it was quite a while back. It was in the evening, definitely. It was nighttime.
Okay. Now you've mentioned several times about an experience you had at a big crash that you had that you saw when you were on your way out to see your father. What happened there?
This was in 2013. I was leaving Kansas City to go to Utah. My father was diagnosed with cancer, and I was in a hurry to get to Utah before he passed away. And my son was asleep in the back. It was around 1 o'clock in the morning, probably. And I see what I believe is a star, and it's coming down really fast. It's green, pulsating, and then it stops about maybe a couple hundred feet above the ground, zigzags, stops, crashes, and then MPs, emergency vehicles, come flying to the scene within seconds, a minute tops. And I just shook my head. I said, I can't believe I just saw this. And I said, I'm going to keep going. My son's in my car. I don't want to be stopped, interrogated. So I kept going.
So you thought it was a meteor?
I thought it was a shooting star to begin with.
Oh, okay.
But this was definitely intelligently controlled. It wasn't an asteroid or meteorite. I mean, it was a known object for sure. So.
And these emergency vehicles, did they pass you on the highway?
We passed each other. As I got even where the crash took place, I just kept going, and they had stopped at the scene to see what was going on. So, which I think they knew what was going on. But
Okay.
this was in Emporia, Kansas. That's where this took place, by the wind turbines.
And what other encounters have you had?
Several. I'd like to go back to 2002 in Utah. I was going to, excuse me for a second, going to a LDS dance. I used to go to these quite often with my friends, and I'd always be the first person to get there, say 6 p.m., and I'd leave at 1 a.m. when the dance was stopped. And I was traveling on Redwood Road by Utah Lake, and to the west of me is Dugway Proving Grounds. And I had passed them as a Army Reserve base as well when I was, I'd get into Utah Lake, but I got turned around and I had to get on I-15 and come back. And as I was going west toward the mountains, on the other side is Dugway, I observed what I thought was a moon again. And the moon's pretty tonight. It's right above the mountain. But then it started to move, and I'm like, must be a helicopter, Army base right around the corner. But then it started doing maneuvers that even a helicopter can't do. And honestly, I just shook my head and said, I'm not even paying attention. And I got on Redwood Road, started going southbound towards Utah Lake. And I got to this point on Utah Lake, which, by the way, was investigated by one of my best friends, who's a lieutenant for Utah Transit Police Department. And he confirmed what I said had happened. I was southbound on Redwood Road. I came to this corner, and believe it or not, there was a little fence corner with a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'd never seen that before. And to my left on Utah Lake was a little peninsula, little island. And I noticed that very clearly. And as I went around the corner, I started heading back toward I-15. And within, who knows what the time frame was, all of a sudden I found myself back on Redwood Road and passing the same point that I'd already passed with no explanation. And I was in shock. And I said, I know what I just saw. How is this possible? So I finally get to the dance, and Alex Flower, my friend Chad West, who passed away in 2015, or excuse me, 2012 in a car wreck in Utah. They both questioned me. Said, Tony, where you been? Where you been? They were scared. I said, oh, I got turned around. What is it? 7 o'clock? And they go, Tony, it's 10 o'clock. Look at your watch. And I'm just like, whoa, and there was that incident. And yeah, so
you had 3 hours of missing time, basically.
And I passed the same spot on the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and my friend Alex went back to that, went down all the way down Redwood Road and confirmed there's only one area like that. So I had him do that.
What do you think happened during that time?
Well, I definitely believe I was abducted. Was myself in my car taken? I don't know, but I definitely was gone, and then somehow put back into my car and proceeded to pass the same spot. So I definitely believe that. Dugway Proving Grounds is what they call the new Area 52. That's what they call it, equivalent to that of Area 51. And there's a lot of strange things going on there. I mean, there's police officers that have witnessed things there, and yeah, it's pretty strange.
Now, you've had some strange things happen as of late. Let's talk about the, spirit and ghost activity where you're staying right now. What sort of things have happened there?
Quite a few. I first noticed I was startled about 3 in the morning. And I got out of my bed and I looked out the window and I noticed this cat was in my vehicle. I watched him for a second. He was fiddling around with things and knew what I was seeing, grabbed my gun, and I went outside to approach him, and he was gone. And that was the first thing.
Wait, you cut out for just a minute. It was a man in your vehicle?
It was a man in all black with a black hat. And
okay.
As I approached him with my gun, he was gone. And also on that very same day, a military helicopter flew directly over the house, which seems to be, as far as other things, I've seen approximately 2 ghosts. When I say ghosts, I'm talking they're all white and glowy. That's what I would call them. And the spirits, I kind of call them like all black, and I got startled again in the morning, woke up, and I'm laying on the side of my bed and staring at my face, about a 6-foot person spirit with half his face gone, staring at me. And I immediately knew this person had committed suicide. And I don't know what they wanted with me, but he only looked at me for probably 3 seconds and he disappeared. And I've seen 2 aliens, 2 grays in my house now, and many flashes of light. My cat, Cindy, still visits me at time to time, and she's really beautiful. She's all sparkly and glowy, and she likes to rub up against me and Bobby and her brother and things like that. And then I had an incident, I think, what was it, 2 months ago, I think I told you. I got startled, woke up again in my bed, and a being about approximately, by judging by its red eyes, was probably 9 feet high, and was very tall and just below the ceiling, staring at me. I couldn't get a figure of the body because it was so dark with the red eyes. There's no disputing that I saw that. And that very day, another helicopter flew over the house, a military helicopter.
Okay.
This seems to happen a lot.
Let's go back to you said you saw a couple of grays in the house. What were the circumstances around that?
They just appeared and then were gone. That's all I saw. It was on two different occasions. One was in the bedroom, and the other one was in the living room. They just appeared and they were gone. I don't know how else to explain it than that.
Did they both look like typical grays? You know, what, 3 or 4 feet tall? What was
Yeah, they were small. They were, egg-shaped heads and skinny bodies. And they were just looking at me, and that hasn't happened for a while now. It's last time that happened was probably a few months ago, I would say. And I'd like to.
Didn't you say that one time you saw an ET in your car?
An ET in my car?
Yeah,
No.
I thought you told me several months ago that you saw an ET in your car.
I don't recall. No? I don't recall that. No.
Okay.
But I'd like to go back to the Oklahoma incident if you'd like me to talk about that one.
Yeah, definitely.
This was in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. I was on my bed. I was having trouble sleeping, and I had a bluish white light shine through my bedroom light above my bed, and I clearly saw that. So I looked over to see what the time was. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and as I'm doing that, a gray pops his head up, looks at me, drops down. After seeing that I had observed him. And then I felt something grabbing at my feet, and I looked down to my feet, and I passed out, just out. Woke up next morning, recalled what had took place. Immediately, I don't know why, I just looked right at my right ankle, knew something had happened. And I had, basically there was 3 little circles, or 2 little circles on each side, exactly the same, with a cutout space of a diamond on my skin, had been taken out. I called you, hysterical, just going crazy. Called my best friend Todd, same thing. And then I went into the shower, and I just started scrubbing at that thing, and because I was just panicking. I did originally, and I hate myself for this, did originally take a picture of it, but then, it just scared the living daylight me. I deleted it. But, there were witnesses to this event, as far as what had happened to me. And it gets even weirder. About within weeks, a couple weeks maybe, I started having these episodes where I was being shocked. Something was shocking my head in the most agonizing pain I could ever possibly explain. Maybe someone being electrocuted in a chair. And this kept going on and on for approximately 2 weeks. And, I got to the point where, I kid you not, Margie, I thought about ending my life because I couldn't take it no more. It was that painful. And I go to a clinic, and as I'm in a parking lot to have this looked at, I called my dad, Bill Degn, and told him everything that happened. He didn't know about any of my UFO experiences, so I started telling him about all that and what was happening in my brain, and I could tell that he was really disturbed about it. And he said, "I'll pray for you. You're going to be okay." And I said, "I'm at the hospital right now. I'm going to have them do their scan or whatever on me and see if there's some neurological problem or something." He says, "Do that. Get back with me." So I go in the clinic, and here's what's weird. I got seen about an hour later, and then they do their tests and all this, and they're looking at my eyes and all this. And I said, "There's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "Look, something's wrong. This is real. This is not, I'm not imagining this." And they said, "We don't see anything wrong neurologically. You're imagining this." And they wouldn't talk to me anymore. It's like they totally avoided me. They wouldn't go out any further with me. And I was pretty upset about that. And I want to go a little further into that. A few months later, I moved out of Oklahoma, moved back to Kansas City. And I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. Yeah, my dad. Yeah, that's right. My dad was diagnosed with cancer, which we already spoke about. And I honestly, to this day, wondered if he wasn't murdered, because he died of a mysterious cancer 3 days after being diagnosed, after I, shortly after what I had told him. And yeah, so that's bothered me ever since. I've had a hard time with that.
What line of work was your father in?
My dad was in the Air Force. He was a fireman warden. He was a fireman, a ski patrolman, deputy sheriff. He did quite a bit through the years, and he was at Vietnam. He did a tour in Vietnam. My brother also was in the Army for 40 years, a chaplain in the Army, and I was Army National Guard. And it's kind of weird. It's really strange is there's a lot of members of my family that have been really high up in things. My grandpa, I don't know exactly what he did. My dad's dad, but he worked for the president, received an award from the president. My first cousin, my very first cousin, works for the Pentagon and is a lawyer there. And it's just really strange. I really think these events that have happened to me somehow correlate to my father or the family. I really do.
And he never spoke to you about any of that?
Ever again. And when I told my brother about the experiences after my dad had passed away, it's like he hasn't talked to me ever since. He just wants nothing to do with me. And we've talked a couple times, but that was me calling him to get property of land that was supposed to come to me when my dad passed, but he refuses to give to me because he's got power of attorney. But he just won't talk to me. So I think I know why.
Yeah. Now, as of late, let's talk a little bit about the very bizarre winged creature, Batman, Mothman thing. When was your first sighting?
Mothman, Birdman. Well, this was around the time that shortly after my dad died. It was an apartment complex in Lee Summit, Missouri. It was a nice, beautiful day out, and I went for a walk. And I'm in the apartment complex that's off of 291 in Woods Chapel. And but I observed one little cloud in the sky about 200 feet above me with no other clouds anywhere to be seen. And that caught my attention. I thought that was cool. So I'm looking up at it. Oh boy, all of a sudden a bird-like man pops out of it. How I believe he's part man is he had legs like a human being and his legs were bent. Imagine you're a human being, 200 pounds, and you're flapping your wings slowly, and you've got human legs that got some weight to it. Those legs are going to bend until you take off. And that's what this thing did. And I watched it probably 30 seconds. Then it went back into the cloud, and I took out my phone. And I said, please come back out. Please come back out. And I waited approximately 10, 15 minutes. It never came out again. And I just left. And after that happened, oh boy, what I call black ops helicopter was following me everywhere on the freeway, flying directly over my apartment, the building over my apartment directly. And I even filmed that. You've seen that. And which I said, I've got you. I've got you. And I had another day, I was going to the grocery store, Price Chopper, and I had 5 unmarked SUVs, white, which I knew immediately that they were either CIA, FBI, somebody came in behind me, just like that. And then another one. And they tailed me for about 6 blocks. And finally I said, I know who you are. Get off me now. And then they broke off immediately after I said that.
So you were in your car and you said that, so they heard you.
Yeah, they heard me. I'm sure. Yep, they heard me.
Okay.
How? I don't know. Implant? What? I don't know. And it's just things like that kept going on. My phone was being tapped. I think I called you and told you about that the day it happened. And it just kept getting weirder and weirder. And I'll never forget that. That's for sure.
And then you also saw, you were out walking in that same neighborhood. You saw that creepy thing.
Yes, it was nighttime, and I went for a walk. I love to go for walks. I still do. Well, not that well now with my bad legs, but I'm walking on the outer part of the apartment complex. There's a street light, and as I'm walking towards that light, it buzzes and goes off, and I felt like this electrical current around. And then comes this, I don't know what's called, Margie. This half dog looking man comes across the street, stops, and makes a screeching noise out at me, and then shoots to a bush. And I just took off running. I was scared out of my wits. I'd never seen something like that before. And in fact, I came home. I came back on the opposite side of the road to try to avoid the thing. And I think it was also in that same night, I went for another walk, but on a different area of the apartment complex, kind of towards the center of the complex. There's a swimming pool, a little pond. I was in that area. And as I'm walking, I noticed the clouds were really low. And I thought that was strange. I mean, when I say low, they were like 50 feet above me, 75 tops. And what caught my attention is I saw the moon. And I'm like, what? How's the moon that low? This is impossible. And I kept on walking and walking, and it kept moving, following me all the way. And then I finally just left, went back to the grocery store again, came home, it was gone. And only thing I could think is that was a UFO. And so, I had the Birdman, the Mothman, whatever you want to call this creature, that Dogman thing, and a UFO pretty much within weeks of each other happening. And vehicles following me everywhere, phone getting tapped. And then I met a girl, and I went to California to be with her. And I had given an interview with, I think it was your sister. Was it your sister, Margie?
Could be, yes.
And that day before I gave the interview, I had noticed that my computer, my laptop, had been tapped by the CIA. And I clicked them off to make sure they weren't like going off and all that. And then I gave my interview. And that night, something startled me, and I got out of bed, went into the bathroom with my girlfriend still asleep, and I felt something weird on my stomach. And I looked down at it and pulled up my t-shirt, and it was a red arrow, approximately 3 inches long, arrow like this, pointing like toward my kidney. And I'm like, what on earth? What is that? I mean, somebody put that on my body or something? Then I go back in the bedroom and thinking I'd only been out a minute maybe, and 2 minutes after staring at that. And my girlfriend's like, where you been? What are you talking about? You've been gone 2 hours. I'm like, what? It doesn't matter where I go. These events keep taking place. Doesn't matter. You think you can hide. You think you can go overseas, whatever. It's going to keep happening. It doesn't stop.
Let's go forward to your next Mothman encounter.
My next one was, I was in Liberty, Missouri. I was coming home from working the airport, and it wasn't, I would say maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. There was nobody out on the road, just me. And I come to a street light that's probably about half a mile from the 2 bridges that go into Independence. And I'm at a stoplight, and all of a sudden, this very large bird-like man comes down, stops within 10 feet of my vehicle, my windshield, looks at me, flapping his wings, legs bent just like before, and then takes off really. And he takes off fast. And I'm like, did I just see that? Yeah, of course I did. But that was the next one. And then I had several after that. One flew by me by a quick trip, really quick. I saw it, and it was just gone like that. But I knew what I saw. And it gets to the point now I even know when it's following me. I was on.
Yeah, talk about that. How you sense that it's around.
That was in Lee Summit, And that was just down the street from the sheriff's department on that outer road. And it's just this feeling. I knew it. I knew it was following me, and it was above my car. And then there was another night. I was picking up a person at the airport. He was a Chiefs player, Kansas City Chiefs player. And I picked him up and I took him to Overland Park, Kansas. And I felt like possibly it was following me again, something strange about it. But I wasn't really sure. And I go back to the airport and I stop at the gas station at the airport to get some gas, fill up. And I look at my hood. I'm like, what on earth? What the heck? There's these yellow patches of oval, I mean, they're kind of upward, like you're frying an egg, that type look to it. And they're all over the car. And I'm like, what? So I called you and I told you about that. We took pictures of it. And
Yeah. I took a sample of that, sent that to
Yeah.
the lab, and took pictures of it. And whatever the substance was, there was a lot of it. And it was also crystallized, which I found to be very odd, because even though that was, I believe it was in January, it was cold.
Yeah.
But by the
Right.
time you got the car to me, it was above freezing. It wasn't that cold. And so whatever the substance was, stayed crystallized.
That's why it was twinkling out of the round part of it. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, but the results is what's interesting. Lynn Mann did some tests on it, and she found the pH matched that of a bat. And what we're doing right now with that sample is she's still got it on ice, and we are trying to get bat DNA to compare it to. I have contacted 4 labs and I have been unable to get anybody to even respond, but we'll keep working on it. So, hopefully we'll get an answer as to what that is.
If maybe it was a bat, it was one big old bat, because I don't know, regular bats can do what I saw on that.
Well, it was definitely urine, and it was definitely over your vehicle.
Wow.
So that's just bizarre.
It is very bizarre.
Now, where do you think that this Mothman creature is hanging out? I think you have a theory about that.
I think it's more than a theory. I really do. I think I've called you a couple times on that, where I'd be coming home or I'd go to the airport and I felt his presence by the bridge. It likes to hang out around that bridge. And in that general area are a lot of hilly valley types scenarios where it can hide in trees, and there's even a cave over there that I saw, and I felt really strongly that it was possibly going into that cave. And I also, when I came home from the airport going toward Independence, I knew that it was on the second bridge. Underneath it, I felt it very strong, and it scared me, and I just kept going. And I think I called you on that one, if I remember right.
And that's going over the Missouri River.
Yeah.
And it's a big, huge bridge. And
2 bridges. There's 2 bridges right next to each other. Yeah.
And there's an odd correlation there between the bridges and the Point Pleasant, West Virginia sighting.
Yeah.
And there are others, the Ohio Bridge.
And there's a plan over there too. There's a plan over there, just like in Point Pleasant. I mean, that's really strange. I thought about that too.
Yeah. And then we've had a number of sightings of winged creatures in the greater Kansas City area, and other people are seeing it as well. So there's definitely something going on there.
Yes.
What is your most recent experience?
With Mothman or UFO?
Anything.
Well, recently it's been a couple of days ago, I noticed something was following me, and it was all black, and it was big, and it was on a roof. It ran across the roof, across from the house, and I clearly saw it, and it disappeared. And I saw it again from a couple blocks down towards William Crispin, It was all black. It was ran across the street. It's like it's following me, And before that, I've had what about, I don't know, 3 UFO sightings at the airport. And I know for a fact I don't believe they were anything of ours. It wasn't a helicopter, meaning, of course, the helicopter is going to have a light, but it's going to have reflector lights, green, red, and they're going to be going off, And I had noticed this orangish, goldish color, like spear, shoot down above the construction area of the new terminal, pulsate, then it fades out. Then it comes back, fades out, and then it's gone. I don't know. It's gone. Definitely not a helicopter. Definitely not a plane. Definitely not an asteroid. And I've had 3 of those sightings now at the airport. And I'll continue reporting if I see them. That's for sure.
All right. Well, let's move on now to more high strangeness on a different subject. Let's talk about Elvis for a little bit. What is your connection, and how did you find out about it?
Well, let me before I say anything about it, let me state that I didn't believe this for the longest time. I thought it was crazy. Like, no way, no way, no way, no way, till it gets to the point where it was no longer I could deny it. When I was a kid, I always felt this strong yearning to be close to Elvis, and I don't know why, because I wasn't even a fan. I didn't like it. I saw a couple of his movies. I think Viva Las Vegas, Stir Crazy, or Girl Crazy, I think it was called. And I didn't follow his music. I was a Kiss fan, and Elton John, and ELO, stuff like that. I didn't like Elvis Presley, but I always felt drawn to him. Something force was bringing me to him. And the day they said he died, I knew deep in my heart and my soul that wasn't true. That was fabricated, and that he was actually still alive. And I'd been conversing with a psychic. I believe she lived in Philadelphia, if I remember right. And I was in Utah at the time. And I was at College of Eastern Utah studying, playing baseball. And I started talking with some things, and we got acquainted. And one day she's like, "Tony, I don't want to charge you anymore. Here's my personal phone number. You keep in touch with me." She knew I was moving to Springfield, Missouri in a week. So when I arrived to Springfield, Missouri a week later, I gave her a call. And I said, "How you doing? Blah, 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 this and that." And she says, "Tony, I really need to talk to you." And I'm like, "Sure, what's up?" She's like, "Do you believe in reincarnation?" And I'm like, "No, not really, but anything's possible. I mean, some people think John the Baptist was Elijah. So, I mean, anything's possible." Because, well, you weren't reincarnated. You died. And I know who you are. And I go, "You know who I am?" "Really?" And she goes, "Yes." I go, "Okay." And before she would tell me that, she says, "But I'm going to tell you a couple of things. Within 2 years, you're going to be a professional singer. You're going to run into people who knew this other person." I can't remember exactly how she said it, but that were part of him. And I said, "Oh, okay." And long story short, within 2 years, and not even 2 years, I was a professional singer for Andy Williams in Branson, Missouri. And I started meeting people that knew this one particular person really, really well. I mean, they were just coming to me. I wasn't going to them. It was so weird. And she tells me that. And then I finally get to the point where I'm like, I said, "Okay, I can't take this anymore. Who am I?" And he says, "You are Jesse Garon Presley. You're Elvis's twin brother. You died at birth. You went to spirit world." And I'm like, "Okay." And like I said, when I first heard that, I was like, "This lady's nuts." I didn't tell her that because she was a friend or an acquaintance, good acquaintance. And so I said, "Okay." Sure enough, 2 years later, I'm a singer, blah, blah, blah. Then I started running into people who played with Elvis Presley, James Burton, Ronnie Tutt, the Blackwoods. They were coming to me. And it's like we were magnets or something, magnets of steel. And the first time that happened was across the street. No, it was at the theater, Moon River Theater, Andy's Theater. And in fact, let me touch on that a little more. A lady had told me that Elvis was in hiding, going by the name John Burroughs, and was living in Chicago, Illinois. And I was on break that very same day. And here's what's eerie about this. President Clinton was in town. And I see this white Cadillac with dealer tags or rental tags on it, whatever, pull into the station. And out comes a couple bodyguards. And this man looking a whole lot like Elvis. And I looked at him and he looked at me, and we locked for probably a minute. Neither one of us moved. We just froze. And touching on that a little more, I'm in break between shows. I'd already done my first show. We did 2 shows a day, 6 days a week, 350 shows that year. And Louise Burton, James Burton's wife, comes up to me out of nowhere, didn't know her from Adam, says, "Hi, blah, blah, blah." She says, my husband played for Elvis Presley, and we're at they played for John Denver. Would you like to meet us? I'm like, sure, So that was the first one. And I'm like, then I met John Denver, who I actually protected too, twice after that. And James Burton, Elvis's lead drummer, or lead guitarist, was playing. Ronnie Tutt, the drummer, was playing for John Denver. A few years later, while working at a hotel in Utah, of all places, John Wilkinson, his other guitar player, is at the hotel I'm working, and we met. So these things were happening all the time. But I'm still at like, this is crazy. I'm not Jesse Garen Presley. I don't believe this. This is nuts. But then it gets really weird. 2015, in Beverly Hills, California, I'm picking up a lady at a hotel with Uber, and she gets into my car, and I say, "How are you, ma'am?" She goes, "Good. How are you?" And I said, "So what do you do for a living?" And she's like, "I'm a psychic to the stars." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Oh, cool. I once conversed with this psychic." And she goes, "Yeah, I know. You're Jesse Garen Presley, Elvis's brother." Just like that. And I'm like, "How do you know that?" She points up to heaven. I'm like, holy cow. But still, I'm like, okay, 2 people have told me this, but I don't believe this, And a few years later in Branson, I'd go for walks and sing and this, that, and rehearse a little bit. And I started feeling Gladys, Elvis's mom, my mom's presence constantly. And she was always showing me proof that I really am Jesse. And this one, I think, is the biggest one of all. I'm going for a walk, 2nd South into not too far from the landing in Branson. And there's this street corner with this display in a window. And she says, "Tony, go to that window." I said, "Okay." So I start going to the window. And as I'm approaching, I see a couple sewing machines. I thought, well, that's interesting. My mom in this life was a seamstress, and you were a seamstress. And then I finally get to the display windows, and I see this big quilt of different colors and designs. And she says, "Take a picture of that." I said, "Okay." So I took out my iPhone, I took a picture, and then I looked at the picture. It says, "Zoom in on that picture." I zoomed in on that picture, and I see as clear as day, written on that quilt, 1934. Then I hear her say to the right of me, "The year you were conceived." Now, that quilt is the same, almost identical pattern to the quilt that's at the Tupelo home, Mississippi, where I died and Elvis was born. So now I'm like, well, there might be something to this. I mean, I shouldn't ignore this anymore. People might think I'm crazy, but hey, I'm gonna look into this more. Through the years, I found so many things that were so, tied into each other. Like Elvis was a cop. He was a singer. He was an actor. I did all those things. He was born in Tupelo. In this life, I was born in Amarillo. 35, 65. We aimed the same amount of letters in our names for the same height and weight in our primes. I once wore one of his jumpsuits. It fit me like a glove. And it's just strange things like that. And not only was I born in Amarillo, which sounds a little like Tupelo, the address where I was born, 503 Vernon Street. 503, you turn around, is 1935. Vernon Street Vernon was our father. So, it's just things like that. Well, finally, about approximately, what was it? I think it was 9 months ago, around there, 10 months ago. I told you about this. I finally got to the point where I just couldn't take it no more. I told a few people here and there, but I said, all right, Jesus, I can't take this. God, tell me if this is really true, show me. But if it's not, you won't tell me anything. That's basically what the prayer was. So about a week later, I'm in the kitchen. Excuse me for a second. And I'm reheating some food in the microwave. And, you can see your reflection on the microwave really good, like a mirror. And I leave for a second and go into the bedroom. I come back. I look at the time on the microwave. I look down for a second. I think I was looking at my phone or something. Then I look back up. And I'm sure everybody has heard of astral projection, which has happened to me, by the way, 5 times in my life. Once in Job Corps in Clearfield, Utah, my soul had left my body, hovered over my body and looked at my body, then went back in. And then once when I went to heaven, I believe my soul actually left my body. And which, by the way, I'll be talking about that event September 24th. I'm going to do a live self-documentary on that. But, and then 2 times my heart has stopped from my kidney, and then the heart started again and went back in my soul. Now, so this time I look back up after looking at my phone, and I kid you not, God is my witness, my soul, face of my soul came out of my body, and I looked at it for approximately 3 seconds, and I looked just like Elvis. Then it went back in. And I'm like, holy cow, it really is true.
Wow. Well, it took this long to convince you that there was something to that.
Forever. I'm a sane person. I look at logic, but it took something miraculous for me to finally see it was real. It's not a joke. 2 people didn't know me from Adam, both told me, and it's just everything. So yeah. I'm Jesse Garen Presley. I mean, my soul is my body. I'm Anthony Brian Degn. so
let's go back to you think Elvis is still alive? What makes you think that?
Well, I was a cop, and I'm good at investigating things, of course. And one of the things when you mentioned that I was a deputy constable, I served warrants. I went after people, arrested them, bring them to jail. And one thing that you're trained at as an officer is not just fingerprints, but you're trained in DNA, and you're trained in facial recognition. But then one particular part of your head you're looking at is the inner ear. It's like a fingerprint. And, let me give you an example. Michael Jackson, somebody having identical curvatures and dents and features of the inner ear like him would be like 1 in a million. Well, I knew I had pictures of Elvis's ear, and the reason I took it off a known photo of him, and it was his left ear. And so I knew what that looked like. Well, I'm watching a video one night on YouTube, and somebody was joking around about how this was Elvis. So I thought, I'll watch it. Okay. And it was in Sussex, and Lisa Marie was in the video. So I'm looking at this. By the way, I'll tell you that in this, but I noticed a man following her at nighttime in a French restaurant. And, okay, he's probably a bodyguard. But then I'm like, wait a minute. This is an elderly guy. He's got a beard and sunglasses. Nobody would allow that to take place as a bodyguard. They wouldn't hire that person. So I'm like, who the heck are you? So then the video gets to the point where he turns and I can see his left ear, and I stopped the video and I took a snapshot of that with my iPhone, and I compared it to known ears of Elvis, blew it up, and it was a match. And he looks very much like Elvis back then. That was 2012. 2 years ago in Branson, I was watching Graceland Cam, live Graceland Cam, his house live. It was about 1 in the morning, and I'm looking at his windows, and only 2 people were allowed up in Elvis's room. Well, 3 now, actually. Elvis, Lisa, and Priscilla. Nobody else was allowed up in that room. And I saw movement in the curtains. I mean, it was being open and shut. I'm like, whoa, Lisa must be there. So I'm watching it for a second, and approximately 30 seconds later comes this elderly man around the front of the building, the house, walks up the steps, thinks about going through the front door, and then like changes his mind, turns around and grabs his hips. Well, Elvis grabbed his hips a lot in pictures. I knew immediately, just felt it was him. And so I took a snapshot of that. And just you look back at the evidence is overwhelming. It really is. I mean, the guy not only was a drug enforcement agent, but he was in the military. He had connections with the president of the United States. He had numerous life insurance policies that were never cashed in after he supposedly died. Well, the two of them were not paid up. So obviously you wouldn't want to do that if you're alive, because it's fraud. It took 16 people to carry a coffin on a body that supposedly had been autopsied. And these 16 people were struggling to carry it. That was weird. He played racquetball till 3 a.m. He had his teeth done, called the president. I mean, it's clear as day. And then the very next day, August 17th, 1977, 6 people that he'd been investigating went to prison. So it's called witness protection. And this happens to a lot of people. I believe it happened to Michael Jackson, but I don't think he had death threats. I think he just wanted out of being Michael Jackson. So I think even Elvis might have had a play into that and helped him. And that's what I think on that. But I still believe he's alive. And mainly I believe that. I mean, there is some compelling possible evidence, but ever since I've been a kid, I've had a gift to where I know when someone famous is going to die. I've had that for a long time. And now, of course, when I went to heaven and came back, I'm like, I can feel people's presence and all that. I've never felt his presence in heaven. So I don't believe that he's died. I still believe he's here. And that's another reason why I believe that.
Wow. That's a pretty amazing story. But let's go on now to another amazing story. Your connection with Karen Carpenter. And this is extremely bizarre.
Well, Karen, I mean, what can I say? I've loved her since I was a kid, 3 years of age. And her music always touched me in a way that no one's ever touched me in music. And kind of also like I felt a drawing to her. But I did like her. It was different than what with Elvis. And when she died in '83 of anorexia nervosa, I really just madly fell in love with her for some reason. It just happened, and I started hearing her, hearing her voice, her talking like Gladys does, and my mom and my dad, a lot of other people, and I could feel their presence. It's like a small, still voice, It's like, and one day in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was going for a walk, and this is a possibility. I can't say that this is really her, but I was going for a walk and I was really depressed. It's happened on 2 different occasions on 2 different days. A lady with a white, beautiful white hat, big hat, and a wedding dress was following me across from the street, was just looking at me and following me. And I felt this peace when I looked at her. And she was really small, a really short lady. And he said this happened on 2 different occasions. And even today, I still wonder if that was Karen somehow, some way following me. And I've always felt this, like I said, just being drawn to her. Well, in 2015, I was living in Northridge, California, and I was going to Thousand Oaks, California to try to find a producer. I was going to pitch this producer story of my life and see if they would do a documentary about me. Long story short on that, his address was a mailbox and he wasn't even there. But as I'm going through Thousand Oaks, I'm on what I think was called the 101, I believe it was, 101 South, I think. And I feel Karen really strong. Tony, she calls out to me, hey, Karen. And then I kid you not, right after that, this Carpenter song comes on and starts playing. I'm like, cool. So, I'm like, all right, obviously she's trying to tell me something here. So that day I go home and I watched some videos on YouTube, and I realized two things. One, oh shoot, tomorrow's the anniversary of her passing. I didn't know that. Wow, maybe that's why she called out to me. Then I found out, oh, well, where's she buried? I'll go visit her, on the day of her passing. And I find out that where she was buried was less than a mile to where she called out to me. So the very next day, I go and visit her grave her mausoleum for the first time. And immediately when I come up to her mausoleum, I notice a beautiful cloud in the sky. Once again, one cloud with no other clouds around. And I took a picture of it. And in the picture, when it's developed, you can see angels, you can see a white cross, and next to her mausoleum are two purple oars. And a lot of people will say that those are angels. They're tall. And so that was pretty interesting, which, by the way, there was a rainbow inside this cloud, a beautiful rainbow. And Karen happened to sing a song once called Rainbow Connection. And this is kind of weird, but also that very first day, which was the 32nd anniversary of her passing, and she passed away at 32, was a hawk about 5-7 feet above my head, literally doing a small circle above my head, screeching at me. It follows me all the way to my car and then just disappears out of nowhere. And that was the first event. But every time I would go to her grave, a miracle took place. When I say miracle, imagine you're watching a video, and I can't recall the name of the song right off the bat, but Something Always. And her and Richard, her brother, are walking down this path, the sidewalk in Asia. And in the video, she's pulling at these leaves of a tree, and then she comes up to a bush that has these white flowers on it, which, by the way, I'm sitting on a bench. Okay, here's her mausoleum. There are two tall trees behind it. And then running this direction is a long bush, and a long bush on this other side with a beautiful tree towards the other side. And I'm sitting on this bench, and these bushes don't have flowers. They're just regular bushes. And it's California. It's just not going to have, if it doesn't have flowers, it doesn't have flowers. So I'm sitting on the bench, and she touches these white flowers on this video. The song ends, and I get up and I stretch, and I turn around, and just in the section behind the bench, white flowers appear on it out of nowhere, just like that. And they used to say, I was in shock. I could not believe what I was seeing. But it really happened. Another day, I'm sitting on the steps of her mausoleum. And remember the big, beautiful tree I told you about to the other direction, maybe about 70 feet from the mausoleum. It's kind of like a biblical story of a tree of life. That's what you say it kind of looked like. It was really beautiful. I'm listening and watching the video. Close to you, why do birds suddenly appear? And the video ends, and then two white doves come out of that tree and fly over me and Karen. And another day, I'm watching the video, and I'm behind her mausoleum, and I don't carry cash on me in any way, shape, or form. I always just carry plastic. You know that. And I'm sitting, I lean down for a second, watch this video, sitting kind of Indian style. Video ends, I stand up, and out of nowhere, two $1 bills appear underneath me. Like, what the heck? Then on another day, it's like 105 degrees, and I'm just sweating. It's hot, and I'm sitting on that bench, and again, that bench. And I get off that bench, and I turn around, and 5 little water bottles of water underneath the bench out of nowhere. I didn't bring them there. I didn't put them there. And I was the only one there. And then on another occasion, she calls out to me and she's like, Tony, I want you to go see Richard. I'm like, why? He says, I want you to tell him what's going on. Go see him. Now, I didn't know where he lived. She says, I'll show you, like something like that. And all the way to his house, she directed me. I didn't know where Richard lived. She took me all the way there. And we get up on this hill overlooking this valley, and she says, I started going toward these houses, and there's a security shack. And I get up there and like, yes, sir, can I help you? And I'm like, yes, I'm a former singer from Branson, Missouri, and I'm a big fan of Richard. Could I see him? That's all I said. So I'll give him a call. So he gets on it. So that confirmed he lived there. And he gets on the phone and says, "Sorry, sir, he doesn't know who you are." And I'm like, okay. And the security guard had told him that I was a friend of his, which I'd never said, you know. And so I think that spooked him. And because I don't know, God, I'm sure there's cameras for his side of the house to look at the shack. And he saw, I don't know this guy. He's not my friend. So I think that's why that happened. And you know, ever since she constantly communicates with me, and you know, it's like the Elvis thing too. I mean, there's just so many things that happened to me. Like I was working on a landing. I was driving a little kitty choo-choo train, and with passengers on it and stuff, and I'd be taking a break or something, walking around the landing, and all of a sudden I'll think of Gladys, or I'll hear her, or I'll think of Elvis, and twins walk by me just out of nowhere. It happened all the time.
Wow.
When I was working with you, you were making me do this list of possible clients, and I'm on this one page, and I'm looking at names. What do I see on this page? I see name Elvis for first name. Then I get down to some other customers, and I see what was it? Jesse, the name Jesse. Then I get down another one and it says Tony. You know, it's just things like that. They're always happening. And yeah.
Wow. Well, let's, I'm going to open up the chat now. If anybody has any questions, just go ahead and post them in the chat or the Q&A if you want to. And Tony, when you talk about communication, like with Karen,
Yes.
is this telepathic? Do you hear her voice?
I sometimes hear a voice, or it's telepathic. It happens both ways. So, but I'd have to say,
you hear the voice outside of yourself rather than inside your head?
I'd say, yeah, something like that. I mean, I can't prove it, but yeah, I mean, just like with my mom, or, you know, yeah, same type thing.
Okay. And
it's definitely her voice. In fact, it happened again about a week ago. You know, it's clear as day. Hello, you know, that's all she said. Hello. And I can just, you know.
So what do you think the connection is with her? Do you think you're soulmates?
I think we're definitely soulmates. We're twin. Some people call it twin flames. I might add a little bit on the Karen thing. I met a girl in Branson who is a Karen Carpenter tribute artist, and we're very good friends. We're like family. And I used to work for her husband, Keith, who does Neil Diamond. And one day she's doing her shows, and I took and gave her a rock from Karen's grave, by the way, which she loves. She made it into a necklace, and I carry her rock with me at all times. That was at her grave. And one day, you know, she's on stage, and I see, I kid you not, her spirit, Karen, on stage with Diana. And then the show ends, and Diana and I talk. And before I can even tell her that I saw Karen on stage, she told me she saw her. Saw her. And I'm like, I did too. And so she was to your right by that speaker. She goes, yep. I'm like, wow, you know, and yeah. So,
wow.
Yeah. So she definitely believes me, and she says she feels it. She calls us twin flames, is what she says. So I just say, you know, spirit mates or whatever, but yeah, that's what she says. So yeah, I definitely believe that she loves me. And you look back at what happened in 2015, and this, you know, this is a lot to grasp here, but I really believe it in my heart that it's true. You look at the rainbow connection, close to you. We were close to each other. The doves flew over us, you know, and there was always like some song that played into that event, you know, so she was definitely speaking to me and saying something. So I really believe that's what it is, that she loves me, and when we get to heaven, we'll be together. I really do. Okay, which, by the way, she was a big Elvis fan.
Oh, okay.
And she loved hawks and doves. She wore t-shirts all the time with them.
Well, those definitely sound like signs.
Yep.
We've got a question from the chat. For the ETs and other paranormal beings you see, do you have a particularly good or bad feeling about any of them? Are they a threat to you, watching over you, etc.? What do you think?
Sometimes I have a scary feeling about it. Sometimes I don't. In Branson, I had an incident where a craft was following me over by the landing, and I'm rehearsing, singing, walking around. It's nighttime. And I walked, look at, first I thought it was probably a helicopter plane, came out of a cloud and just stops. And it was just glowing white, this beautiful glowing white spear or something. And I'm like, wow. It was like 25 feet in diameter. So I started video of it, which I've got. And so it ends, it goes back in the clouds, and I'll wait for it to come back out. I think it came out one more time. I recorded again. Then I went back in and it come back out. When I saw that, I felt a great love, benevolence. And I believe that this particular craft has followed me around quite a bit and many, many times through the years. And so I go through the video and I take snapshots on the iPhone of the video just to see if I could get anything clear, and I kid you not, I see a circle within a circle. And this thing was 25 feet in diameter at least. So I'm like, wow, that's like the will of Ezekiel. That was the first thing that hit my mind. And I immediately went on Facebook the next day and posted the will of Tony. And I put a demonstration of Ezekiel and me. And people thought it was funny, but I was being serious. That was weird. But yeah, that was definitely good. As far as ETs, I was disturbed about the broken arrow incident. And when I called you, you helped me calm down, try to understand what was going on. And the Utah incident, I didn't feel anything bad about that. There's just been so many UFO sightings. I've had probably 20 now in my lifetime. And I've seen things as big as a football field, boomerang shaped, and clear as day, bright day, no clouds in the sky, your classic UFO bowl, plates in the middle bowl with no rivets. I was hovering over a building when I got off work as a corrections officer, and there's no disputing me seeing it. But at the time, I didn't have a video phone, so I couldn't do anything about it. But yeah, they're a little bit both. They're pretty much even good and bad feelings. They really are.
Okay, we've got another question from James. He says, what do you see at the theater in Branson? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, James. You might want to elaborate. Do you mean as far as spirits go? Why don't you take your mute off and just go ahead and ask that question?
Yes. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, hello there. I was wondering, what other experiences did you have at the landing theater?
I've had on 2 other occasions, separate days, where I observed a craft approximately 25 feet in diameter, glowing, pulsating, kind of like the one that I saw that I just explained. And there were helicopters around it, following it, and then it disappeared. On this one night, it disappeared, and the helicopter just started circling, like it couldn't find it. Then it appears again on the other side of the lake, the landing, and it goes toward that direction, the helicopter, and follows it. And I've had that. There was a night where actually Margie was in town, and she was watching the group 6, SIX. And that night, in between when it was night, the show was going on, I observed, or no, I'm sorry, it was before that. That's right, it was before the show. I looked to the west and I saw a glowing object, and I think it was one helicopter that was around it, and then I saw a fighter jet around it, and then it disappeared, and the fighter jet the helicopter took off. So there were two of those, and the landing, I almost, yeah. I mean, hey, you want to talk about the landing? I've had missed time there at the landing. I've had time where time froze, which I can't explain. I've gone back in time. One was 15 minutes. I had drove from one side of the kiddie train to the other side, which was exactly a mile. And when I got to the other side, I took a short break for a second, talked to some people, and then came back toward the other direction. And when I did that, well, let me go back. When I got to the other side to begin with, I looked at my watch. I knew exactly what time. I can't remember exactly. It might have been 3:15 or something like that. And then I get back to the other side, and at least 20 minutes had passed by then. Then I looked at my watch, and it was 3:15. I'm like, what? And it's like it went back in time, or it froze or something. I don't know how else to explain it, but I saw my watch. I know what it said, and just a lot of strange things happening at the landing that I can't explain.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
We've got another question. Tony, why do you think Karen Carpenter is interested in communicating?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. One, she never found true love. She was married to Tom Burris, who lied to her, used her, said he could never have a kid, this and that. He was fixed, whatever. And in my investigation into that, which, by the way, Karen asked me to investigate, I found out not only is Thomas remarried now, but he has a kid, a boy. His name is Sean. And kind of a brain cramp. I apologize. Can you repeat the question for me?
Why do you think she's interested in communicating?
Okay, yeah. Well, like I said, she never found true love. She married a guy. I think she was desperate, but he didn't truly love her. She was hurt. She passed away, and a beautiful woman, and just never could find that love that she always dreamed of. And what's strange about that is I've sought that same type of love, and I've never found that love in my life ever. I've been married twice, but they didn't truly love me. You want that unconditional love, and she had that to offer to somebody, but it never came to pass. And so I think when she went to heaven, she found out about me, found how much I loved her, and she fell in love with me then. That's the way I think. And I really believe that.
Got another question. I know you mentioned regressions, but have you done any personal meditations where you believe you've reached out to another being, be it a spirit or other? And what did they tell you, if you're comfortable sharing?
Well, you could go back to when you're saying beings, you're talking human beings, passed away human beings, or you're talking, could you elaborate on that a little more?
She says, be it a spirit or other. You've
Well,
reached out to another entity.
Well, I reach out to Gladys constantly, I really do. I talk to her like I'm talking right now, and sometimes she hears, sometimes she doesn't. And same with my mom in this life, and my dad, both my dads. Although I don't think Vernon doesn't talk much. I think maybe once I've felt his connection, but my dad in this life definitely does. And well, maybe this will be touch base on that a little better. I'll be the first to say that I've lived kind of a strange life, a sad life at times. And when my dad died and I was in Lee Summit, I took out a full bottle, which hadn't been opened. I'd opened it, ibuprofen, 100 pills. And I was really depressed. I was really hurting. And I took those pills out and I dumped them on a kitchen table, the dining room table, and a glass of water. And I was ready to go at it and take those pills. And then I went to the hallway for a second to pray and ask God to forgive me for taking my life, which I'm about to do. And I squatted down on the floor when I was praying about that. And then after I prayed, a white feather out of nowhere just came and landed on my lap. Where'd that come from? There's nothing in my house, but I'd have a feather, and so that like, whoa, it woke me up. So I went back into the living room and I sat on the couch and I started to cry. And then I saw a white spirit, which I knew to be my dad, walk by me and disappear. And I said, I love you, Dad. And I took those pills, I put them back in, and that was the last time I ever thought about that. Well, I still get the thoughts, but then sometimes when you get the thoughts, they're not always you. But I would never do that, and I would never take my life.
Now, speaking of things giving you ideas, you do have a number of implants. And one theory that some of us believe is that, and I've had experience with this myself, where the sudden thought comes into your mind and it's really not your thought, but it could even be your voice, or it might be someone else's voice. How have you had experience with that?
Well, definitely the CIA vehicles that followed me. I know they heard me when I said back off, because they immediately backed off. And implants that I'm pretty sure I know I have are, of course, this one on my finger, which I've had since I was a kid. You can clearly see it. And the two behind my left ear, one on my right ear. Maybe that red arrow that was on my stomach. I don't know if something was put there, or they were just trying to tell me, hey, your kidney's going bad. I don't know what that was. And of course, my right ankle, where the Broken Arrow, Oklahoma incident, where they grabbed at my ankles. You knew that because we ran it. We ran it with whatever that instrument is again that you run over, and it went off like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, the EMF meter. That has gone off. So we know you've got some implants. But one of the theories is that somebody is sending a message and giving you an idea.
I think that's possible. I mean, there's a lot of times when something would happen, and I don't know how to explain it. I'd feel like in my finger. Yeah, that'd be the best way. I felt like somebody was trying to talk to me about something, and I'd be in the bathtub taking a nice bath, and just this hand where that implant is would start vibrating and shaking. It went into the water. Excuse me. It almost does it all the time. It's the weirdest thing. So I definitely think something's going on with that, reaching out to me in some form or way. What it is, I don't know, but if that is an answer to the question or not.
We've got a question from Patricia Alman. She says, thank you, Tony, for sharing so much with us. Extremely interesting. You mentioned something you're presenting on the 24th. Can you share about that?
Yes, ma'am. Patricia, basically, I'm going to go on Facebook Live probably around 6 or 7 o'clock before it gets dark. And I'm going to broadcast myself explaining it in an event that happened to me back in 2001. Of course, we all know about the terrorist attacks. At that time, I was a cop. I had 2 police jobs and a bodyguard job. And my wife was cheating on me and divorcing me and kicking me out of my own place. And on the night of September 11th, or the morning of September 11th, I was on duty, and I got wind that the plane had crashed into the tower. And so I went up to the detective's office and watched live with all the other officers. And we observed the second plane hit the tower. And it was a tough time in my life. And as you can imagine, and at the end of my shift, which I had worked 42 straight hours because no officer was allowed to be off duty until there was an all clear from America. And at the end of my shift, right at the end of my shift, I pulled 2 guns off a kid that I almost had to kill. I almost shot. And, I'm grateful that I didn't have to. And so, needless to say, between everything that was happening, I just couldn't take it anymore, and I had to leave Utah. So I did. I went to Kansas City to be with my friend Todd, and stayed with him about a week after the terrorist attacks. And it was on a Sunday night. I said, Todd, I'm leaving. I'm gonna go back to Branson. I'm gonna possibly get back into singing. He says, okay, be careful. We'll pray for you and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay. So I head to Branson. I get into Springfield about 1 a.m. I'm exhausted, where you're falling asleep at the wheel, exhausted. Then I see this church with the big parking lot. I'm like, oh man, I'm so tired. I can't even get to the hotel. I'm just going to pull into that church and I'm going to sleep. Well, it got weird. As I'm pulling into that church, I'm no longer tired. I'm wide awake. I was so wide awake. I was frustrated. It was driving me nuts. So I park at this side of the church, and I notice a house to the front of me about 100 yards, and one to my right about 100 yards. Nobody's up. Lights are off. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I pray. And I said, Jesus, I can't take this no more. Please take me off this earth. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm not suicidal, Lord, but just take me, please. And I was really sad, very depressed. And all of a sudden, after I said that prayer, I started hearing music. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, my radio's not on, and I pinched myself to even make sure I was definitely awake. And I'm definitely awake, and so I get out of my car, before that, after I did that, all of a sudden I started hearing this beautiful, I just said that. I think I just said the beautiful music. It was just coming out of nowhere. And I looked to the house right up front, right. And like I said, nobody was up. And I'm just like confused. So I get out of the car and I start to walk around the car, and I'm pretty much shouting, Jesus, what the heck is this? What's happening to me? Where's this music coming from? And then I get back into the car. I check my radio again. It's not on. Made sure I was really awake. I was. And I look out the stars for a second, and all of a sudden I hear a loud trumpet blow, like I'm on stage, and I heard this pop noise. Then I started going to heaven, and I didn't get quite all the way there. And here's where it gets interesting. Physically, Tony Degn wanted to die, but as I almost got into heaven, going through this fast white tunnel toward heaven, and I mean fast, at first I felt this darkness. Then the light, I started going in the tunnel, going toward light. I felt this love that I've never felt in my life. It was so incredible, so beautiful. And then I almost get there, and then my soul, not me, my body, my soul says, no, Jesus, it's not my time. Please send me back. And he sends me back. So that's, I'm doing a story on that live. And I'm going to tell people that on the day that I do this, 24th, it's the 20th anniversary of that event, which of course we've got the 20th anniversary of September 11th about to happen. So that's why I'm doing that.
Okay. Well, we don't have any more questions. It's a little after 8. Thank you so much, Tony, for sharing all of that.
Thank you.
We all appreciate it. I know everybody is very interested. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tony. This is Debbie. Thank you so much. That was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. It's good to finally meet you.
Good to meet you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Some really great stories.